Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be my annual-ish life update video, so if you care, then you might like to watch some of this video. There'll be timestamps down below. I'm going to touch on three main things. Number one, the life update. Number two, the business update. And number three, just a few reflections, a few thoughts, a few bits and bobs that I've been thinking about. And there'll be timestamps to everything down below if you feel like skipping around. So let's start with the life update. So lots of things have been going on in my life. Firstly, I got married. I met a lovely lady a few years ago. Her name is Izzy, and she's also a YouTuber. We actually met in medical school because we went to the same college. We were both medical students at Emmanuel College, Cambridge, but we really connected afterwards through the YouTube stuff. She was also a former student of my part-time YouTuber academy. Her YouTube channel is now absolutely blown up, and the room next door in this house is going to be her own YouTube studio for stuff that she's doing. But anyway, yeah, we got married in August of 2024. And then after getting married, we decided we were going to move to Hong Kong. And so we have also moved to Hong Kong, where I am right now, and will be for at least the next year, maybe longer, depending on whether we like it. So on the marriage front, Izzy and I were together for 3 years-ish before we got married, and we deliberately kept the relationship sort of like under wraps. Some people kind of figured it out, like based on triangulating Instagram stories and the fact that, you know, we went to the same medical school and stuff. People had kind of clocked, and the fact that I've sort of been referencing the fact that I've had a girlfriend for the last couple of years. Like some people on the internet figured it out, but for the most part, no one really knew. I think for the most part, no one really cared. One thing that I am keen to do moving forward is have certain aspects of my life that are a little bit more private rather than for public consumption. I think when it comes to my own stuff, my own like business finances and my own life, I'm very happy sharing a lot of stuff publicly. But as soon as someone else gets involved, like another person, like a wife or potentially kids further down the line, it's a big question mark in my mind of like how much to really share about that stuff online. Some part of me wants to, because I think, you know, Izzy and I have talked about maybe doing some like joint videos where we share like relationship tips that have worked for us, because she also really enjoys reading books about relationships and things like that. And we think that would be cool, but we don't want the relationship to become content, as it were. And we know so many people who do like relationship content. And there's always a bit of a risk that when your life and your relationship becomes the content and becomes your livelihood, oh God, it's a bit of a nightmare to deal with. And I know people who have had like loads of bad things happen in their real life as a result of the pressure and scrutiny and stuff that comes on their relationship through social media and content and stuff. So it's something that we're thinking a lot about, not in any major rush to, I don't know, do relationship-y type stuff on the internet. We probably won't, given that, you know, my stuff is mostly personal development and business. Her stuff is mostly personal development and language learning. There's almost no need to bring the relationship side of things into it, but we'll see. We haven't quite figured it out yet. There's this book called The Second Mountain, which I read last year. I think it's by David Brooks, and the idea is that there are two mountains in life. The first mountain is the mountain of freedom and the mountain of success and the mountain of like getting rich and stuff. And then you climb that first mountain, and then one of three things happens. Either you get to the top of the mountain and realize it's not as fulfilling as you thought it would be, or you get knocked off the mountain because either you have a health problem or like a major life event happens that knocks you off the first mountain. And then you're in this valley of despair. But then you realize in this valley that there's actually a second mountain, and that is a taller mountain than the first mountain. And the second mountain is the mountain of commitment, the mountain of investment, the mountain of like going deep on like a relationship, a community, a cause, a faith, whatever the thing might be. And what he argues in the book is while the first mountain is the mountain of like pleasure or whatever, the second mountain is the mountain of true and lasting joy. You know, a lot of my friends, a lot of my mentors are married and have families and stuff. And they often talk about, you know, most of them are older than me. They talk about how like in their 20s and maybe early 30s, they were focused on the first mountain of achievement and of success and of like trying to make something of themselves. And then they got married, they had a family, and now they realized that like, you know, traveling around all the time and having all these parties and drinking all the time and whatever is not that fulfilling. It's not that fun. And in this second chapter of life, or third chapter, or however you define life chapters, in this next chapter of life, the true joy comes from like committing to someone, committing to a place, like building roots rather than having wings. This is something that Tim Ferriss talks about this in 4-Hour Workweek. Even at the end of 4-Hour Workweek, there's this whole chapter on filling the void. That once you have the ability to do whatever you want, you realize that, oh, actually, I kind of need to find something to do in general. So some sort of purpose that helps me be useful to other people, that helps me grow in some ways. Through this business stuff, through this YouTube channel, through all the things, I've done my fair share of traveling. I've done my fair share of moving around. I experimented with the digital nomad experiment like about a year ago. And I kind of realized that, yeah, those things are fun in small doses, but I quite enjoy life at home. Life at home is great. Get to hang out with the wife, get to play squash on a weekly basis, get to play badminton with the same group of friends, don't need to fly places and stuff. Like in my 20s, the thought of being a sort of, I don't know, globe-trotting business entrepreneur, author, creative person, always flying to this place and that place, and oh my goodness, being able to fly business class and staying in fancy hotels, all of that seemed like a really fun thing, and it was a really fun thing. And I still enjoy it to some degree. But now I'm just like, you know what? I just love the day-to-day. I quite like the quote boring routine day-to-day life. It's quite fun. I don't really need that much novelty. Don't really need that much excitement. I can lock in, set up my nice YouTube studio, not have to pack cameras up every time I want to make a video and make a new setup in a whole new hotel room because I'm in a new city. It's just kind of nice. And I think that same philosophy applied to marriage, like a relationship with this one person where, you're seeing this person very often and it's quite nice. It's like deepening that relationship it's like going deep rather than going broad, if that makes sense. So, I've been married for a couple of months at this point, but so far I'm very much enjoying married life. It's great. Reading books about it, of course. I'm going to make videos on some of those books at some point. It's just generally a good place to be. If anyone is watching this and is married, if you can comment down below, I would love some marital advice. Anything you wish you'd known when you were a few months into your marriage would be kind of interesting to hear, because I'm always interested in learning from the wisdom of other people. Next up, we have the move to Hong Kong. So we decided to move to Hong Kong. Why did we decide to move to Hong Kong? Well, the main reason, to be honest, was that Izzy does not like the weather in London. London is really nice in terms of weather in the summer months, and we may probably want to spend the summer months in London anyway, sort of June, July, August time. But for the rest of the time, London is sort of kind of grey and a bit cold and a bit depressing. That really affects Izzy more so than it affects me. And so she was always saying that hey, look, if this becomes a long-term thing, I'm quite keen to leave the UK. And so I was like, yeah, sure. I'm not that attached to London. I quite like it, but it would be interesting to explore other parts of the world. And so then the question became of okay, knowing that we want to leave London because of the weather primarily, where do we want to go? And so we kind of explored the US a little bit, explored Miami, explored LA, explored Austin, spent a bit of time in San Francisco, places where we know there are entrepreneur creator type people and a bunch of friends of ours and things. But broadly, the US was quite similar to the UK. It's just that the buildings were bigger, the roads were bigger, and the cars were bigger, and the portion sizes were bigger. Everything was just bigger in the US, but broadly it was fairly similar to the UK. So we were thinking, well, what about Asia? Moving to Asia would be kind of fun. That's more dissimilar from the UK than the US is, and could be quite interesting. And so we were like, okay, what are the sort of major cities in Asia where we could try out? And so after a bunch of watching YouTube videos and looking at taxes and looking at residency options and looking at weather and looking at people that we knew who'd lived in these different places, we sort of landed on 3. Those 3 were Hong Kong, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia. And then we were like, all right, cool. Where do we go first? And initially we were like, do we want to do the whole 3 month thing? Do we want to sample all these different places? But we were both sort of sick of the whole traveling thing and just liked the idea of actually committing to a place for at least a year, setting down a few routes, and then seeing if we could build a life there. And then we spoke to a few friends who had spent time in all three of these major cities. And broadly, the consensus was that in the absence of us trying them out ourselves, and we wanted to visit. I've been to Singapore a couple of times, a bunch of times. Want to visit Malaysia on holiday. But the broad consensus was that Hong Kong is actually a great place to be. Hong Kong has a lot going for it. The weather is great. There's a lot of greenery. 80% of Hong Kong is national parks. And so wherever you look, there's a bunch, tons of greenery, but there's also high-rise buildings and stuff, which is kind of cool. Hong Kong is also very well internationally connected. It's easy to get to the airport, and the airport flies direct literally everywhere. Singapore has that as well. Kuala Lumpur less so. Like there's fewer direct flights from KL to other places, and given that I do travel some of the time for work stuff and friends and family and stuff, I wanted a place that has really good international links. So that's why we settled on Hong Kong. We were like, you know what, let's just try Hong Kong. A bunch of friends recommended Hong Kong would be the place that we'd probably like most. And so we got here, tried it out for a few weeks, and we were like, you know what, yeah, we can see ourselves living here. And so we just decided to commit to at least being here for a year. We've rented a place for at least a year, setting up shop. I'm trying to find a local squash club and badminton club and tennis club to join, and, you know, all of the stuff, just sort of building a life around this being here in Hong Kong. Pretty cool place so far. If anyone happens to be in Hong Kong, I'm actually in the market for friends. So drop me an email, and at some point when my inbox becomes less of a cesspit of random crap, I will have a look through the emails and we'll see. I'll ask someone on my team to sort of filter through and see if, like, oh, there's like a few people in Hong Kong who want to hang out. And I've already actually hung out with a couple of people who've like DM'd me on Instagram and stuff. So do feel free to reach out if you would like to be friends in Hong Kong. In particular, if you have recommendations for like squash and badminton and tennis to play without having to pay the absolutely extortionate fees for these like clubs and stuff. And like, to be honest, the main life change from being here has just been that it's just really nice. It's really nice having a routine. It's really nice having stability. It's really nice being able to say that, like, yeah, I could take singing lessons where every Monday evening I am in fact available. Or like, hey, each morning I can go for a walk in the neighborhood thing outside and get a coffee from the same place. And I can actually spend the first 4 hours of my day working on a YouTube video or whatever the most important thing to do work-wise is. Whereas for the last year, my life has kind of been all over the place where, you know, traveling here and there, renting different places, not really having a proper studio setup except for like, you know, a month or two at a time, doing a bunch of stuff related to book promotion, publicity, and it's been a bit all over the place. Whereas now for the first time in a long time, I feel like, I'm settled down in a place for at least a year. I've got a solid routine, no major travel plans happening just on the horizon. And so I can now set up a nice YouTube studio and like make it look pretty and like join the local squash club and stuff without having to cancel every other session that I'm going to because like I'm traveling or something like that. So I just love the routine. Maybe I'm becoming super boring. I'm just a boring kind of guy, but like there's something about boring stability and routine that is really fun. In a way that like the constant novelty of like the globe-trotting entrepreneur lifestyle wasn't really, to be honest. Okay, so that was a bit of a life update. Anything else on the life update front? Not married, moved to Hong Kong, going back to London for a bit, I think like next week to see my brother's new baby. He's had a baby. We did an episode of our podcast, Not Overthinking, if you want to hear my conversation with my brother about like what it's like being a new dad, which is kind of interesting. That is pretty much the life update. Let's now move on to part 2, which is the business update. Broadly, we make a bunch of free content and some percentage of our audience will convert into paying customers, and then that funds the production of the free content. And it's just sort of this infinite game. I always think, and I've talked about this repeatedly, but like I always think if I had all the money in the world, what would I do differently? And if I had all the money in the world, I probably wouldn't sell paid courses. I would just make stuff online and make stuff and stick it for free on the internet, probably. I might still do some paid courses because there is something around, you know, people who pay attention, and there is something about like when a customer is actually paying for something, they treat it differently compared to if it was just available for free. But broadly, if I had all the money in the world and all the time in the world, I would continue doing this. I would have a nice room in my house where I can film videos. I would film videos a couple of times a week, sharing stuff that I've learned, documenting the journey of whatever's going on. I would want to have a family. I'd want to read books about relationships, make videos about those books. I'd probably want to continue growing business just for the fun of it, like build new products. We've built a new app called VoicePal recently, which has been great so far. It's got about 2,500 paying users, which is fantastic. So these days, the way I create content is that I go on a walk with my AirPods in, hit record on VoicePal, and I just sort of spiel random thoughts. Like it transcribes, it uploads, it figures out what I'm talking about, and it asks sensible follow-up questions. And then I can answer the follow-up questions and I can just talk. And this has just been amazing because now for me to make a YouTube video or plan a YouTube video or even like write a module for one of our courses, I don't have to sit at my desk hunched over like a, whatever. I can just be walking around in the nice sunshine and around the trees and stuff here in Hong Kong, and I can just talk. If I had all the time and money in the world, I would build cool stuff like that. Stuff that actually helps me be more productive, more creative, whatever, and release those as products. That would be cool. I still make YouTube videos. I still write books. And so for the last few years, my answer to that question has been fairly static. It's been like, yeah, I actually am doing the thing where if I won the lottery, there's not a lot I would change about what I'm doing. And that's a great place to be. That is the place I think it would be, I would love it if everyone in the world, obviously, it's never gonna happen, but I would love it if more people were at the point with their own life and their own business where winning the lottery wouldn't substantially change anything. And I think that's that's a cool like lens through which to view goal setting and personal development and business growth and stuff. It's like, if you had all the time and money in the world, what are the major changes you would make to your life? I was like, all right, cool. Do you need all the time and money in the world to make those major changes? There are so many people I've met who are in jobs that they don't like, where the job pays really well. And I'm like, why are you still doing this job? And they're like, oh, because I need the money. Like, do you? I know for a fact that you have at least X in savings. And like, you've paid off most of your house mortgage. Do you really need the money? Like, do you really need that money to put bread on the table? And they're like, well, maybe not actually. And it starts to sort of tweak some screws in the mind and the firmware update and things. I think it's too easy to be stuck in a job you don't enjoy because you think you need the money. If you actually need the money, then of course the situation changes. But I don't know, a lot of people who watch this channel, if you're a corporate professional with a 9-to-5, like a lot of the people we have at Productivity Lab, speaking to people like you're probably not on the poverty line. You probably don't need that job to put bread on the table. You could probably get a lower paid job that is more fulfilling and still put bread on the table. I don't know, man. Easy for me to say because like I switched from medicine to YouTube, which ended up being way higher paying than medicine, but I don't know. Thankfully, the business is still broadly the same in that it's still broadly the thing that I would do if I won the lottery. There are a few changes we're making to the business. One thing that we're doing is really simplifying things. So over the last few months, we've been attempting to build the business in a more scalable way. So what does that mean? Well, we were trying to spin off our YouTuber Academy into its own mini business and trying to spin off our Productivity Lab into its own mini business. I was thinking at some point I want to start like an online business school where I do videos and courses and stuff helping people start online businesses, and that was going to be its own thing. But it just like overcomplicated the absolute living daylights out of everything, trying to build like 3 or 4 different brands, rather than just focusing on my personal brand like aliabdaal.com or the Abdaal YouTube channel and just doing everything within this. And a big part of why we overcomplicated things was I had this should in my mind of I should build the business in a way that is scalable and sellable. Scale and sale were the 2 shoulds in my mind. The scale thing was like, okay, well, I guess I should build the business because it's the right thing to do to build a business in a way that doesn't rely on me. What if I decide one day to not do the YouTube thing anymore? Well, the business would crumble. Yeah. What if I get hit by a bus? Well, then the business would die. Yeah, it would, because if it's so reliant on my personal brand. And so I thought the thing that I should do as a business owner is de-risk the business from me, in the sense of, in theory, if we build other products and other brands, those products can scale in a way that isn't correlated with me just making more and more YouTube videos. Maybe. That was one sort of should. I should do this. The other should was that I should build a business where I've got the option to sell it further down the line. Spoke to a couple of mentors and they were like, yeah, right now you might not want to sell, but hey, if you have a few kids and suddenly you want to reduce the amount of time you're spending making content and stuff, it would be nice to have the option to sell the business for, 10, 20 million. And I was like, yeah, it would be nice to have the option to sell the business for 10, 20 million. Yeah, sure. Okay. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that seems kind of sensible. I guess we got to build these separate brands and grow them as separate businesses. Not realizing that A, that is a huge amount of work. B, it's actually really hard to do. It's so hard to grow a business, especially if you're trying to decorrelate it from a personal brand that's already working. A big thing in business that I've realized is just take the thing that's working and keep on doing it until it stops working. Me continuing to do personal brand stuff, selling courses under my name, making YouTube videos under my name, not trying to get other team members involved in like showing up in the content and turning it into like a cast of characters, a YouTube channel. It still works and it's still fun. So like as long as that continues to be the case, why not just double down on it? And I realized that this is kind of going all over the place, but that's okay. I realized that this thing of like I should build a business in a way that someone might want to buy it was also a should. And one thing I've realized recently is that shoulds are just not a good way to live life. I went on a retreat that was hosted by a lovely chap called Joe Hudson and his wife Tara, who run an organization called The Art of Accomplishment. And they had this 7-day intensive retreat in California. And one of the big takeaways was that there are so many ways in which we should ourselves, but every should has behind it some kind of shame and some kind of whip. It's like whenever you say, oh, I should do this, it's like, oh, okay, well, I should do this, okay, but I'm not doing it, but I really should do it. And like I'm sort of mini flagellating myself every time I have this should. Like, oh, I should build a business in a way that it could sell one day. Like, I don't think I really want to, but like I probably should because like yeah, these mentors, I respect them, they're smart people, they're telling me something I might want further down the line, so I probably should do it. But every time there's a should, there's this like resistance. As opposed to want to. I want to make YouTube videos. Occasionally I think I should make a YouTube video, but then I try and change it to be like, no. There's no should here. Like, I don't have to make a YouTube video. I can choose to make a YouTube video. There's no should behind, should I make a life update video every year? I just kind of want to do it. I know it doesn't get that many views. I know it doesn't get that many new subscribers. I know people broadly don't care because they want productivity advice or business advice, which is fine. But some people like these videos, and that's okay. I enjoy making them. I want to make this life update video. It's a want rather than a should. And because it's a want, it happens. But if it was a should, I should make this video, I should do this thing, I should build the business in a way to scale, I should start getting other team members to feature on the channel so that we can de-risk the business in theory and blah, 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 blah. All of those shoulds just add a lot of negative energy to the whole process. They make me rely on discipline rather than enjoyment to do the thing. If you've read my book or listened to the audiobook, which you might like to, Feel Good Productivity, the whole philosophy is, if you find a way to enjoy the things that you're doing and also do things that you enjoy, productivity takes care of itself. You don't have to worry so much about being disciplined or about any of this stuff. And I realized that all these shoulds were overcomplicating the business. I wasn't having fun. Things weren't even working that well because it's really hard to build separate brands distinct from me or distinct from a personal brand. And after a lot of soul searching, I decided, you know what, screw it. Let's forget about trying to build a business in a way that could sell. Let's forget about trying to scale the business and reduce the key man risk. And like, yeah, if I stop making YouTube videos one day, yes, the business will crumble. And that's okay. I'm sure everyone on the team can find another job. The fact that they have worked for me at some point will help them land new jobs. I don't need to worry about that. I can in fact build a business, and this has been a liberating insight. I can in fact build a business where I can actually just do what I want and not worry about like the livelihood of the team because they'll be fine. And having this should of like, oh, I should build a business so that we can continue to employ people forever. I mean, no one stays with the same employer forever. Like, it's just, life is impermanence, life is change, all that kind of stuff. I just realized that there was all these shoulds attached to it that there was no need for. And I can, in fact, just do whatever I want. Which was also the realization I had kind of last year when I made a similar life update video. It's like, oh, I can just make YouTube videos whenever I feel like it. But I sort of like, I don't know if you have this, maybe if you're a business owner or actually in life, I don't know if this is like a thing, but I often do this thing where I sort of like flip-flop between these things. And it's sort of like, the place I always land on is, I can in fact choose to do whatever I want. But then sort of like the entropy of the universe and like being surrounded by other people and reading books and getting advice takes me into the territory of, but I could make more money and I could scale and I could sell and that would be a good thing to do. And I'm like, yeah, I think this is it. I have a few months of like, I can do whatever I want. That generates a lot of energy where I'm like, oh, I'm enjoying my work. I'm super productive, super creative. Because I'm doing what I want, things are happening effortlessly. This is also effortless. It's almost too easy. It's too fun. And then I'm like, oh, right now I'm doing what I want and it's really fun. I could just keep doing that and also make more money and also scale and also this and also that. And then this energy goes into this scale project. And then the energy starts to go down. I'm like, this is actually kind of hard. I'm not sure if I really want this. Why don't I just go back to kind of doing whatever I want and making more profit and having fun and like not having to discipline myself to actually show up and do the work. Yeah, let's go back to that. And I'm sure I see this pattern in myself repeatedly over the years. I'm sure that in a few months I'll speak to someone, well, they're probably going to be American, they're probably going to be making way more money than I am, and they'll be very confident, almost certainly going to be male, and they're going to, with sheer confidence, tell me, hey Ollie, you know what you really should be doing? Oh, it would be so cool if you did blah, blah, blah. And in the moment I'll think, yeah, that does sound really cool. Yeah, of course, if I could wave a magic wand, I would have the ability to sell the business for 20 million. Yeah, sure, why not? I should do that. And I'll sort of psyop myself into getting behind that desire. But actually, a book I read a while ago is called Wanting, The Power of Mimetic Desire by a guy called Luke Burgess. And we're going to do a video about it at some point. It basically talks about this thing called mimetic theory that this guy called René Girard came up with, which is that we often don't know what to want. And so we adopt the desires that other people around us want, especially if those people are people that we look up to. So if I see someone, I look up to them for various things, and I see that what they want is a $20 million exit or a $50 million exit, I will start to want that as well, at least temporarily. A mistake that I've made repeatedly over the years is to take that temporary want and make changes to the business based on that temporary want. Something that Luke talks about in the book is thick versus thin desires. A thick desire is something that you've sort of always wanted. I've always wanted to teach. From the age of 13, I've been wanting to teach, and I've been teaching in various capacities. I've always been building stuff. I've always been designing things. From the age of like 12, been making websites and stuff. That's like a thick desire. It's like a thing that's sort of quite innate to me, this desire to teach and this desire to create. But the desire to sell a company for 50 million, I've never once thought, man, this is something I really, really, really want. There are some people who grow up in like startup land in like San Francisco, the Bay Area, or just some people who are wired that way, who just love the idea. Since they were 3, they were like, oh, I want to exit a company for $100 million. Okay, that's probably a thick desire for them. It's probably something that they intrinsically, authentically want. But for me, I want to exit a company for 50 to 100 million. Even if we could get there, I mean, I'm sure we could. I back myself and our team to be able to do that if that's what we wanted. But only if that want really aligns with my own core self or something. And when I hear that and adopt someone else's desire, because that's what they want, and they're speaking about it in a confident way, and I'm like, yeah, I look up to this person, maybe I should want that as well. I adopt it as a want for myself, and then things go wrong in the business because like this thing, the direction that we're going is not actually aligned to who I am internally. And we come back to who I am internally. I decide, you know what, I can just make videos whenever I feel like it. I'm content making a couple million in profit each year. I don't need to make more than that. That's like the core thing. And then at some point, I'm sure I'll adopt the mimetic desire of like, you know, actually, I've met someone who lives there in Hong Kong, and that place costs $20 million. 20 million US dollars, not even Hong Kong dollars. 20 million Hong Kong dollars would be really cheap. That's only, well, really cheap. It's only like 2 million US dollars. Houses in Hong Kong, bloody expensive. Absolutely insanely expensive. We're renting at the moment because we actually cannot afford to buy because it's just too expensive. But if someone who I look up to is like, who wants that thing and is living in, it's the whole like keeping up with the Joneses thing. I might find myself desiring that really expensive house and then starting to do things to try and pursue more money because I'm like, ooh, I could get that membership to this country club that costs this much money. And actually, all these people I look up to, they're all members of this country club and they say it's really good for their business because networking and stuff, and I'll find a way to justify it. And I'm sure this is going to happen. Or I'm going to be like, oh, I really want that thing. And then we're probably going to try to make more money in the business. That's probably going to take me away from the thing I actually enjoy doing, which is showing up to a camera, coming up with new content ideas, filming videos, making courses, talking to the team. And then I'm probably going to come back to that and realize that actually that's not really what I want. This is like the whole roller coaster over time. Yeah. I don't know if anyone can relate, but I find myself sort of in this pattern quite often, at least like once a year. And I would ideally like to reduce the amount of times I fall prey to this pattern. So we are simplifying the business. We've decided to scrap the idea of building multiple brands. We're just going back to the basics of like Ali Abdaal YouTube channel, aliabdaal.com, the website, which is getting a sick redesign. It looks absolutely sick. And then we'll just sell the products on aliabdaal.com rather than trying to build these different brands and all this sort of stuff. So that, we landed on that decision a couple of weeks ago. It feels right. Here's another thing. This is kind of going all over the place, but that's okay. Here's another thing. One thing that I've realized recently, I'm just going to lean back because why not? One thing I've realized recently is that how something feels is actually really important. I think when I was in my 20s, in my sort of grind and hustle era, how something felt was broadly meaningless. And also, I was, like, for a very long time, wasn't very good at feeling my feelings. And like, yeah, I would just sort of do stuff. And I'd be like, forget, feelings aren't facts. Like, how you feel about this thing is irrelevant. You're just going to do the thing anyway, right? And I think when I started figuring out this philosophy of like enjoyment and stuff, that was when I really started to sort of feel the feelings and recognize, when I was working in medicine, like, getting home to the end of the day and feeling like really low energy and kind of tired and not wanting to make a video. That's interesting. I didn't label it as a feeling of like, I feel sad or I feel depressed or whatever the thing might be. I don't think I ever felt depressed, but yeah. I never sort of labeled it as a feeling because I never really vibed with the internal feeling. I just sort of had the sense that something was wrong. But over time, over the years, especially being in a relationship, I've learned to identify my own like somatic experience, the feelings in the body, all that kind of stuff, and know when something feels right versus when it doesn't feel right. And there was something about this building multiple brands and trying to build a business at scale that didn't quite feel right, but I overrode the feeling with the thought of like, no, but this is a good thing to do. It's sensible, right? And I should do this. Whereas now, thinking about simplifying, thinking about like, bringing everything back into the Abdaal umbrella, not worrying so much about like, if I stop making YouTube videos, the business crumbles. All of that feels really good. There's no part of me that's like, at least in terms of feeling, there's no part of me that feels like that's a bad decision. There's part of my brain, the voice in the head is kind of like, you sure this is a good idea? What if we run out of money? What if like business crumbles? What if like YouTube algorithm changes? What if people just like, what if you just become irrelevant because no one gives a shit about what your opinions on productivity are anymore? Like what if A, B, C, D, E? Like we really should be doing that other thing over there. But it's like this going inward, connecting with the man. I sound so woo. If I had heard myself say this shit like a few years ago, I'd have been like, this guy's off his rocker. He's clearly taken some psychedelics and is one of those weirdos. But genuinely, over the years, I've become more, I think, there's part of me that feels so embarrassed at the fact that I'm saying this, but also another part of me that's like, no, this is my truth and I want to express my truth. Over the years, I've just become better at like feeling my feelings and recognizing when something feels good internally and when it doesn't feel good internally. Maybe that's why the title of the book is Feel Good Productivity. I just thought of that. I was speaking to one of my mentors. His name is Ollie Richards. He's great. He has a main YouTube channel, which is about language learning, and a second YouTube channel, which is about building an online education business. If you're interested in online education business, you should check out his second channel. I'll put a link down below. But something that Ollie and I were talking about as well was like, he asked the question of when you're sort of pondering these different directions the business could go, how do you feel energetically about them? And a few years ago, if someone had asked me, how do I feel energetically about this? I'd have been like, dude, what the frick are you talking about? But when Ollie asked that question a few months ago, I was like, that's the right question. How do I feel energetically about, I get it, yeah. I feel energetically weird about trying to build multiple brands and build a business so that one day I can sell it for 20 million or whatever. But I feel energetically good about simplifying the business, keeping it focused on just trying to make good content and keep it good, and reading and learning more stuff and making videos about it and making a course every now and then and writing a book every now and then. That feels energetically right. And he was like, it's good to know that. And a big part of my decision making now around things is what feels energetically right. Man, I feel so woo saying that, but it's fine. It feels energetically right to kind of talk about this. And since making this decision to simplify the business, it really has felt like a whole breath of fresh air. I should stop inverted commas and feeling stuff. It's really felt like a whole breath of fresh air going through my system, going in some ways through the team as well, where it's like, now that we're not trying to build 3 different businesses and 3 different brands with the same size team, okay, we can just really focus on, we get it, like, just having one website. Oh my goodness, that's so much more simple than having 3 different websites. Just having one online courses platform where we sell all of our stuff from one checkout. That's such a breath. Yes, so good. Oh my God, what a nightmare it is to try and maintain 3 different checkout providers and 3 different checkout systems and checkout Stripe accounts, which are going to 3 different bank accounts, which are ultimately trying to go to 3 different P&L. Oh God, what a nightmare that was. But you can feel, hopefully, the relief that's coming across as I'm like, hallelujah, we are simplifying things. Whew, man, that feels good to get that off my chest. What a nice feeling. Just be like, yes, simple is good. I think at a certain stage of life, you have to do the things that like you should do and stuff. But it's sort of like, what's the point of building a business that is a prison for yourself? I'm mostly just sort of speaking to myself here. What is the point of building a business that's like a prison? What's the point? You got the money, you quit the day job because you didn't enjoy the day job, and now you're making all this money, and you've got all this passive income and stuff. There are no more shoulds. You can, in fact, just do whatever the frick you want. And you'll probably make a couple of million dollars in profit every year to doing that. That sounds pretty freaking good. That sounds pretty solid. That is the place that a lot of my friends and like entrepreneur friends are actually at that place where they're making, low 7 figures in profit or high 6 figures in profit, and they're really happy with it. But there's always that siren's call of more, of like, but you know what's cooler than 2 million? 3 million. You know what's cooler than 3 million? 4 million. That kind of thing. And pretty much everyone that I've spoken to who has been on this journey has found that there is actually a sweet spot. There's almost like a plateau. There's almost like a glass ceiling where, you know, you could probably do $1 million in profit comfortably, but getting to 2 would be quite uncomfortable. Getting to 3 would be kind of hard. Getting to 3.5, like with the info product businesses, you're probably having to run paid ads now. Paid ads were eaten to your margins. Now you're having to figure out your return on ad spend and trying to liquidate ad costs fairly quickly. And now the whole business becomes more stressful. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to find that, like, you know, yeah, you can very comfortably make $1 million a year in profit, or 2, whatever the number might be. But to get beyond that, you're going to have to do big launches. And those big launches are a bit fluctuant. Like, you know, you never really know how much money you're going to make from a big launch until the big launch happens. And then you're going to start being like, oh, we didn't quite make enough money from that big launch. So now we've got to bombard our audience with emails to try and convince them to buy this thing because we didn't get enough sales. Ooh, now we start to get into stressful territory where it feels weird to be constantly selling this thing and stuff. And sort of settling back down to this place of, in a way, it almost feels like a place of complacency and a place of mediocrity, which kind of vibes with Oliver Burkeman's whole philosophy in 4,000 Weeks. Very good book. It feels like a complacency to be content with just making $1 million a year in profit. What a champagne problem. But it feels like complacency to not be growing. You get all that stuff of like, if a business is not growing, it's dying, and you should always be growing. But it comes back to the point that I made in my last year annual video, which I just keep on needing to remind myself of. A friend of this told me once, she was like, growth doesn't have to be measured by the top line and the bottom line. And growth can be found in different ways. Maybe there's just no way to resolve this. Again, I'd be curious if you've gotten to this point in the video and you can relate to what I'm saying in any capacity. I'd love to know in the comments what you think. Maybe there is actually no way to resolve this. Maybe this is just one of those situations of like, there is a healthy tension between these two poles. One pole is the pole of I want more, and the other pole is the pole of I have enough. And if you're like really zen and spiritually enlightened and stuff, you're like always in the I have enough category. But at least for me, I'm going to speak for myself. It sort of feels like I'm constantly balancing on this sort of dynamic equilibrium between enough and more. And maybe instead of viewing this as like, I'm just kind of thinking out loud at this point, maybe instead of me viewing this as like, there is a solution here. It's like the answer is to always be enough, always feel like you have enough, or to always be, I don't know, trying to grow the business. Maybe it is just accepting that, hey, there's no easy answers here. No one I've ever spoken to has easy answers for this. Some people are more in the more camp, some people are more in the enough camp. In different months and different seasons, the same people are more in the more camp versus in the enough camp. My friend Dan Priestley, some of the time he's in more camp where he's like, I want to build another business. Some of the time he's in enough camp or in the less camp where he's like, actually, I want to sell off some of these business assets so that I can focus on the core business. When you're going to the gym, there are periods of time where you're like, okay, this is a season of bulking. And then at periods of time where you're like, this is a season of maintenance. And at other times, this is a season of cutting. And maybe for me, if I were to just recognize that, hey, this is a dynamic equilibrium, it would feel less bad when I'm too much on one side. I'm just like, oh, okay, I can start to sense myself going too much towards more. Let's slightly correct course. We don't need to like upend and change the whole business, but let's just change course a little bit. If we're very much in the direction of more and then I realize, then maybe it's time for drastic change. Or if we're like very much in the point of enough where it starts to feel complacent, which we have been at some points where things have started to decline because we haven't been putting in the energy. Okay, cool. Let's start adding in a sprinkle of more like spice, a bit more hustle energy into this mix. And I think a lot of the stuff like hustle versus chill, toxic productivity, all of this nonsense, what everyone is kind of getting at is that there is a balance between work and chill. Balance between how much you want to work and how much you want to chill. And actually, that's basically this more versus enough thing. It's a balance between work and chill. Do you want to work more or do you want to chill more? And at different seasons of life, at different times of the day, different times of the week, different times of month and year and stuff, you may want to work more, I may want to work more, and I may want to chill more. Right now, I'm in more of I want to work more in the sense of doing more of these videos because I enjoy it, but I also want to chill more in the sense I want the whole business to be chill. I want it to feel simplified. Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, it's just that balancing act. How much do you want to work and how much do you want to chill? What are the goals? What's the goal? What's the plan? What's the system? If the goal is 10 million in an exit, okay, you got to work quite hard for that. But is that really the goal? Should that be the goal? Is that really the goal that vibes with you internally? Maybe, maybe not. If it is, great, go for it. Recognize that there's this balancing act. And I think burnout comes from, okay, here's a hot take. Burnout comes from too much work, but I also think there is a downside to too much chill, which is like a feeling of stagnation and meaninglessness. I know people who are periods of their life where they're like chilling a lot and they don't need to work or whatever. People who sell their companies for like 20 million or whatever, and then have a period of chill where for about 2 or 3 weeks, they're like, okay, I'm just chilling on the beach. And then they start to get depressed because they have nothing to do. And so too much chilling, here's a hot take. It's not medically validated, but too much work leads to burnout. Too much chill leads to depression. Oh, here we go. Yeah. One thing that I read while researching my book was that the experience of burnout tends to actually be different in men and women. In men, the experience of burnout, on average, tends to manifest as a feeling of purposelessness in the work. Like, oh, what's the point of all this? In women, it tends to translate, again, broad generalizations, don't cancel me. Broad generalizations. In women, it tends to translate into a feeling of being emotionally drained. Now, I rarely feel emotionally drained, but I do sometimes. I think for me, the sign of burnout is when the work starts to feel pointless. Like, why are we doing all this? And that's it. I wrote this in the book, and I keep on needing to remind myself of the lessons that I'd researched and wrote in my own book, which is that I've been, over the last few months of us going in this direction of more, direction of work, direction of build these brands and build a business at scale, I have started to feel like, what's the point? I'm on a call with our web design team. I'm like, what's the point of designing all these different websites? Like, what's the point? And that feeling of what's the point, to me, is probably an indication that I'm actually too much on the work side. And actually, hey, let's do less. Let's chill the frick out. Let's like make things more simple, reduce the complexity, rather than keep going on this train of more. I don't think I've ever been at a point in my life where I've had too much chill. So I think I don't think I'm at risk of that at all. I think knowing myself, my inertia is generally towards more rather than towards less, more towards work rather than towards chill. And so really the correction that I'm always doing is in like, okay, I feel like I'm working too much. I'm trying to go too much for more. Let's simplify things. Let's like go for less. Let's go for like simple rather than scalable or rather than complex. Nice. Okay, I like that. I like how in these videos, I just sort of treat the camera as a bit of a therapist and just sort of talk out loud. And I have no idea how long this video is going to be. I always say this in my rambly life update videos, but usually I come to some pretty reasonable conclusions in the process of actually filming the video. So there's this thing around like work and chill. And for me, I know my tendency is to go too much towards the work. Therefore, we probably want to sort of push it back towards the sort of enjoyment, the simplicity, all of that sort of stuff. Anyway, this video's gone on long enough. I think that broadly wraps up our life update. If you are interested, this is last year's life update. If you're interested in how much overlap there is between the stuff that I've supposedly learned in the last 12 months and how much of it is just me relearning the same freaking lessons again and again and again and again. Man, that's the thing. It's just about relearning. It's just about reminding ourselves of what we already know to be true and just coming back to that, because there's a difference between knowing something and actually applying it and sort of knowing it to the point that it becomes internalized rather than just an intellectual thought process. Anyway, that video's over there. Thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day, and I will see you hopefully in the next video. Bye-bye.